Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, 15 lines down from the top of the Amud. Ella Amar Rapapa. Today's Amud is being learned as a zchut for Rif'a Shalema of Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, Nisim Ben Miriam, and Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid. That should have all should have Refuah Shalema, full recovery, B'ezrat Hashem. Amen. This week's learning that the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shea family, Dayan family, Kohen family. Should be an ultimate zchut for all of their mishpachot, B'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Okay, so we are at the tail end of our perek, and we are continuing on the discussion that we started about the Mishnah on Yutet Amud Bet of Machzelet Kanim Gedola versus a Machzelet Kanim Ketana, when you have a mat made out of reeds, a large one and small one. Which one is Mekabel Tum'ah? Which one is not Mekabel Tum'ah? Which one of them is, generally speaking, made for sleeping on, which would make it, of course, susceptible to Tum'ah and invalid as a schach, and which one would be, generally speaking, made for sichuch, for dividers, or for sealing, which would make it, of course, non-susceptible to tumah, and it would be kasher for schach, right? The bamboo mats of back in the time of Chazal, and we had a machloket in the Mishnah between Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer. And so far, the Gemara has offered two different ways of understanding the machloket, Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim. Again, we read the Mishnah, Machzelet Kanim Gedola, a large one, Asa'ah Lishchiva Mekabel Tumah. If you make it for sleeping on, then it's Mekabel Tumah, it's not good. And if it's not, if it's made for schach, then mesachachim ba'veina mekabel tuma. Then you could use it as a schach, and it's not mekabel tuma. It's good to go. That's chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer says it doesn't make a difference. Small, big, achat ktana ve'achat gedola. Whether it's small or even if it's big, which one of the last things we said last shiur was, it seems to be that their machloket is by a gedola. That's the order of things, the way Rashi explained it in the large Rashi, that the Tanaim and Amoraim will speak in order, a very specific order, that they would say the least chidush first, and build that up to the greater chidush, the point of machloket. So says Rabbi Eliezer, not only by Ktana, but even by Gedolah, Asa'ah l'shchiva mekabel tumah, if it's made for shchiva, it's still mekabel tumah, and it will be a problem. You can't use it as a schach, and only if it's made for sichuch is when you can use it. Now, in light of those questions that we offered, one which we just explained right now, the order of the language of Rabbi Eliezer, Rav Papa says the final pshat, which the Gemara seems to stick with, in this Mishnah, says the Gemara, the final answer is given by Rav Papa. The machloket is really by machzelet gedola, by a large mat. By a small one, nobody argues the stama l'shchiva, that if you had no specific intent when you made this, the machzelet ktana, small piece of mat, people would make small pieces of mat for shloofing, for taking a nap on, right? That's what they would make it for. And therefore, short of having a clear mindset that I'm using this for schach, it's pasul. That is, as far as the ktana is concerned. Ki pligi, the only machloket, that, I mean, in other words, both Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim agree with that. That if you made a small piece of mat, not thinking of anything, is pasul. But Begedolah is machloket. The machloket of our Mishnah Yutet Amud Bet lies in, pun intended, in a machloket is on mat that is large. Is it for lying on, is it for sleeping on, or is it for schach? So says the Gemara, Tana kama savar stam gedolah lesichuch. Tarkama holds that regular one, a stam gedola, you make it without any specific intent. We assume that it's made for schach because it's large. People don't sleep on a big one. If you want to sleep, take a nap, you take a small one. It's easier to roll it. It's easier to store it, and it fits your body. But says the Gemara, big one is for schach. Rabbi Eliezer says no, makes no difference. Even a larger one, stam machzelet, is always for sleeping on. People don't use that much of ceiling material from mats made out of reeds, and therefore the majority of reeds are used for mats that people lay on, sit on. Now, if it's larger, so the whole family is going to sleep on, right? It's like the couches. You have a single one, you have loft seat, you have a large couch, you have different sizes for different amount of people. Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Stam Gedola Nami L'Shchiva, Umay Asa'ah L'Shchiva. So why does the Mishnah say Asa'ah L'Shchiva? It means to say, Hachikamar, Stam Asiyata, regular mindset of making it is for Shchiva. So if you were thinking nothing, the backdrop is always made for Shchiva, and therefore it's pasul, it's mekabel tum'ah, susceptible to tum'ah, and it cannot be used as a piece of schach.
So some machlokus in Mitzius, sounds like?
Correct. In other words, stam dat is always like that. Stam dat, I'll always remember when he's speaking about stam dat of what Rav Pam alav shalom used to say. In Shulchan Aruch or Chaim, stam dat is a very big thing. Obviously, in Sukkah, it's Mitzvah d'oraita, so you have to have kavanah, mitzvah kavanah, and all those things. But here, it's a stam dat. And Shulchan Aruch says, for instance, in Hilchot Barachot, that if you have mindset to eat in a certain place, you change your place, it may require you to make a new bracha, right? Or if you are eating something at home in your own house, you take an apple out, you make a ha'etz, and then 20 minutes later, you want to eat an orange. You knew that you had an orange at home, right? So you have to make another ha'etz because you weren't planning to eat this before. Whereas if you come to my house, I bring an apple for you, you make an ha'etz, 20 minutes later I bring an orange out, you don't make a bracha because you don't know what I'm going to bring. When you say ha'etz, your stam dat is on everything the Baal HaBayit is going to pull out, right? So Pam used to say, I don't learn any halachot from this, because I don't know exactly how much he applied it, and B, because of the complexities of this given example. But he used to say, people used to sit and eat. And their dat was on what they were eating. They actually were planning, this is my plate, I'm eating it. And if you decided later on to eat something else, that was nimlach, that was a new decision, right? So nowadays, people are walking around in the whole house. It's a whole shinui makom. When you say bracha, your stam dat is, I'm going from this room to the other room, I'm calling my kid in the middle with the sandwich or without the sandwich, and the empty fridge syndrome is a thing nowadays. You go within the meal 50 times to the fridge, open it for no reason, and just see what else can I eat. So your stam dat has changed in the duration of the galut in America, has become a whole different scenario. But nevertheless, it seems to definitely have to do with the minhag of the place. So if you have a country in which every single mat is used for sleeping on or sitting on, so then it doesn't help that after it's made already, so I want to take this for schach, and vice versa. If you have a country that nobody sits or sleeps on mats, everything is used for walling or roofing purposes. So therefore, that would be, of course, different stam dat as well. So that's basically our final pshat in our Mishnah. Now, the Gemara goes on. The topic of the daf is mats. So we're going to expand our discussion to different types of mats. Tanu Rabbanan, machzelet shel shifa ve'shel gemi. These are softer items. So a machzelet that's made out of these softer items, says the Gemara, Gedola mesachechim ba ktana en mesachim ba. The writer says, a large one you could use as schach, and a smaller one you can't, because again, used for purposes of sleeping and sitting on. Shel kanim ve shel chilat. The ones that are made out of reeds, out of harder items, says the Gemara, Gedula. Some of your Gemara, the newer ones, they actually direct you not to misread this. This is tricky. It's not Gedola, but it's Gedula, right? Gedula from the Lashon of Gedilim Ta'aselecha. That's braided, right? Okay, even nowadays you see some of the, when you go especially to Eretz Yisrael or to Eastern countries, they still have items made with bamboo leaves, right? That they're braided together, and they make all kinds of different baskets, fans, all kinds of different things, hats, like the Mexican hats that they have in it's all leaves shredded to pieces, and then when they're soft, they braid them together, and you could make pretty much anything. You could also make mats from them, right? So says the Gemara, if you have a mat that is braided together, gedula mesachechin ba, then you can make a schach. But aruga, if it's woven together, en mesachechin ba, then you cannot use it as a schach. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Shmuel the son of Rabbi Yossi says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi's father, achatzu mesachechin ba. Doesn't make a difference. If you wove it together, if you braided it together, you could use it as a schach. It's kasher. Mutarim lachem, it's good. And here is the punchline. It's an important line to remember, because we're going to come back to it in a whole Amud later, to this line. Vechen haya Rabbi Dosa omer kidvarav. You know who paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Dosa. Rabbi Dosa paskin that if you have a machatzelet that is woven or it is braided, it is kasher for schach, right? So if you have machzelet shel kanim v'shel chilat, it's made out of reeds, or chilat, and they're woven together or they're braided together, doesn't make a difference. Both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Dosa would tell us that however you braid or weave these together is going to be kasher for schach, right? So we're going to come back to this. Because of this, this is very innocent one-liner that it almost sounds like the Gemara backhanding through this in, that Rabbi Dosa passes like Rabbi Yossi, right? The Gemara is going to go through a whole ordeal here to come back to this Rabbi Dosa that seemingly said something that contradicts this. And I said, wait a second. On Amud ago, he said Rabbi Dosa paskins like Rabbi Yossi that machzet shel kanim v'shel chilat, even if you wove it together, even if you braided it together, it's kasher for schach. Here he says that's not kasher, and then the Gemara is going to answer. Okay, so that's how we're going to unfold this Amud. It says the Gemara. Tanan hatam, we learned in Masechet Idiot. Says the Gemara. Tanan hatam kol hachotzalot metamein tamemet divrei Rabbi Dosa. All of the machatzalot, chotzalot here, right? Not machatzelet, but all of chotzalot, we're going to see in just a moment what chotzalot are mitamein, not metamein, but mitamein. They become tameh. They're susceptible to tumat met. Says Rabbi Dosa. The Chachamim omrim midras. Chachamim say they become tameh midras. Now, what is the difference between tumat met and tumat midras? What's the difference? Tumat met, if you touch a corpse, what do you become? You become of hatumah. Met, a corpse, is avi avot hatumah, is the godfather of all tumah, right? And if you touch it, you become av hatumah, right? There are many levels of tumah. There's avi avot hatumah, av hatumah, rishon latumah, sheni shlishi revi, right? So if you touch the corpse, you become avatuma. If now I touch you, what do you become? Rishon letuma, right? And then after that, doesn't go to Adam, could go only to food afterwards. Adam v'kelim don't go more than that, right? Now, a zav also is avatuma. Somebody has had a bodily emission, also a certain type, also is avatuma, right? So if he touches something, also makes it tameh. But there are many different levels of chumras that each one of these have that the other one may not have. For instance, by a zav, by tumat midras, if something is made for sleeping on or for sitting on, let's say a pshute kli etz. Pshute kli etz usually are not mekabel tuma. It's not a kli. Doesn't have bet kibul. Doesn't have room to accept anything. But if you make it a thing that is meyuchad, it's designed and designated for sleeping or sitting on, then all of a sudden it becomes midras. So it's mekabel tuma. If a zav sits on it, it becomes tameh, right? Whereas without that, it would not be mekabel tuma. Also, tumat midras, sometimes you don't have to even touch it, right? You sit on it when something else is on it. So this is the second layer underneath. It still becomes tameh. Whereas by other tumot, if you don't touch it, doesn't necessarily make you tameh. Tumat met, of course, has a concept of ohel, which other ones don't have, right? So they're different. So it's important to know what level of tum'ah we are talking about. So it says the Gemara, this chotzalot, which we don't even know what it means yet, whatever chotzalot is, there is a machloket between Rabbi Dosa and Chachamim, what the level of tum'ah is that they accept. So Rabbi Dosa says, it becomes tameh tumat met, and Chachamim say it becomes tameh tumat midras. So it says, wait a second, an important tangent. Tameh midras in tameh met, no. You want to say only becomes tameh midras and not tameh met? Is there such a concept that you become tameh midras and not tameh met? We learned in a different Mishnah, right? Hanan Tenan. We learned in a Mishnah, Kola metameh midras, anything that becomes tameh midras, mitameh tameh met, it also becomes tameh met. So it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. If it becomes tameh midras, it also becomes tameh met, right? So says the Gemara, this is a Mishnah in Masechet Nida, Daf Mem Tet, right? Says the Gemara, Ema af midras. The Gemara fixes it. Says Chachamim say it's not just tameh tumat met, but it also becomes tameh tumat midras. So what's the machloket Chachamim and Rabbi Dosa? Simply put, without getting too deep and too confused in the halachot of tumah v'tahara, a simple thing. Chachamim hold that this is a midras. This is something that's made for sleeping on, for sitting on, right? Which would in turn make it, of course, pasul for schach, right? That's the minimum that we should take out of this for now. Before we even know what this chotzalot is. We don't even know what chotzalot is yet. Right? We just say, chotzalot, machloket Rabbi Dosa, Chachamim. Chachamim say this is tumat midras. Which turns the light bulb. Midras means it's made for shchiva, it's made for, because if it's not made for sleeping on, if it's not made for sitting on, it does not become tameh midras. And if it's made for sitting on or sleeping on, so then you can't put it on the schach, right? So that's what we want to take out of this. So says the Gemara, my chotzalot, what is this chotzalot? Right? What it says, Amar Rav Avdimi bar Hamduri, remember this name, Rav Avdimi bar Hamduri says that this chotzalot are marzubli, chazak ubaruch. Right? What is marzubli? The Gemara says, "Mai marzubli." Thank you so much. Right? Amar Rab Abba mezabli. It's sacks, right? The things that you put your stuff in, and that is a shepherd carries these types of sacks with him. It was made out of woven different things, and you put your stuff in. But sometimes when you're tired as the shepherd, you put this sack underneath your head and you take a nap. Right? Oh, so maybe now it's made for shchiva. So that becomes the source of this machloket, whether or not it's tameh tumat midras. So we could already imagine the debate going on over here. Dosa would say, well, this is a sack. It's not made for your sleeping purposes. Chachamim say, no, sometimes you do sleep on it. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Omer, that was Rabbi Avdimi bar Hamduri, right? Resh Lakish disagrees. Resh Lakish says, no, this is actually machatzalot mamash. This is, we're talking about actual mats over here. So how do we know that? Resh Lakish is following his own shita. The Amar Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish said, Hareni kaparat Rabbi Chia ubanav. Right? You see some of the Eastern cultures, they have this thing, they still say kapara, right? So the Israelis and then the Persians have a different way, the Iraqis have a different way, right? It's the Eastern culture. So you have, this actually comes from a Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Bet, as a kavod for father and mother. The Gemara there is muchach, that it's only talking about within 12 months of Rahman al someone that loses a parent. When they mention their name, they're supposed to say Hareni kaparat mishkavo. Right? That any difficulty that would be coming on me should be a kapara for them. Right? So that's the language that would be used. It's a language of kavod. It's a language of kavod. If you take a look at Rashi, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, Yesurina ba'in alai, the difficulties I endure should be lekaparato shel Rabbi Chia ubanav yiyu. Should be a kapara for them. Right? So it's lashon kavod huze. Shu maskir aviv or rabo la'achar mitatam. This is a Gemara, it's a Suggah in Masechet Kiddushin, as we said, Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. There the Gemara is clear that's only within the first 12 months that you do this, but Resh Lakish, this is generations after Rabbi Chia ubanav, and he still is saying, whenever he mentioned Rabbi Chia ubanav, he would say, Hareni kaparat mishkavo, as a tremendous sign of respect. Now, why did Resh Lakish have so much respect for Rabbi Chia ubanav, right? Rabbi Chia ubanav, they were tremendous people, right? We had the whole story together here in Amud Yomi, how he could have been bringing Mashiach with his tefillah together with his sons. If they would all have them together, Mashiach would come. Tremendous zchut they had. Now, what special zchut is this? Really, the source of this is in a story brought in Masechet Ktuvot and Daf Kuf Gimal. The Gemara there speaks about Rabbi Chia's debate with one of his peers. Well, what do you do to preserve Torah? Right? And Rabbi Chia says, I am not going to let Torah ever be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Avidna midi delo ishtakach. I will do something that the Torah will never be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. What would he do? And it's a real Gemara to go through. It's not something for 4 minutes only. But it's kedai to go through it whenever you get a chance. He says, I would go buy flax seeds, right? And grow flax. And then harvest the flax. And, make myself out of it. It's a processed flax. Make nets out of them, right? Weave them together, make threads, make a net. And then go and make traps with this net. And trap deers, right? Then I would shech them, right? He's doing all this himself, by the way, right? He's not making Yaska from Guatemala or some other person in charge of it paid him to do it. He's doing it himself, the Gadol Ador. I would buy flax seeds, grow my flax, make my my linen from it, and create a net, go out there, trap deers, shech the deers, feed their meat to aniyim, process the skin, and now that I have paper to write on, like a cloth to write on, I would write Chamisha Chumshe Torah. I would write myself the 5 books of Torah and the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah and all the Mishnayot on it. I would take 5 boys and I would teach each one of them one of the Chumashim. Mind you, he's doing all this himself, right? And 6 other boys and teach each one of them one of the Sidras of the Mishnah and say to them, now you teach each other. There's so much that you can speak about this Gemara, of how much Kedushat Yisrael matters, that if you're teaching a Torah that the deer was shechted by Rabbi Chia and the meat was fed to the aniyim, and not only that, but even the flax that was used as a trap for this was made L'Shem Yichud Kuchap Richu Shchinteh. The Zohar HaKadosh says a woman cooks a potato, all her machshavot. I didn't have potatoes back then, but all their machshavot, right, goes inside this food. All of her thoughts goes inside this food. You eat it. If she was happy, you'll be happy. If she was thinking of kedusha, you're going to start thinking of kedusha, right? This is Gemara. It's not only the Zohar. The Gemara says, if I am growing this flax that's going to be used as a trap for the deer that I'm going to shecht and make a cloth to teach Torah, that Torah will never be forgotten. Right? You wonder why, especially us, this Faradim, Machmir and Bishul Yisrael. The Jew should be cooking it. Not really, you should not be eating anything that your wife doesn't cook. Right? Who's better than your wife? Right? A goy has cooked it. A Jew 500 years ago turned on the pilot, right? And it's going to be there until Mashiach comes. Okay? But Yosef writes in Siman Kuf Yud Gimel in Yerede'ah, Kula yetera ad me'od. This is a super duper extra leniency. We're not somech on that. Ashkenazim, sheyeh lahem ma shelahem. Right? Maran Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, for the respect of all the Ashkenazim in the crowd here, right? Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes, he said it, they wrote it in his name, that this has such an impact on intermarriage, what you eat, what you think, that because of Leman Hatzalat Klal Yisrael, all the Ashkenazim should be noheg like all the chumrot of Bet Yosef in the issues of Bishul Yisrael, which is one of them. This is one of them, right? Because the kavanah of the process actually matters. If you have a good thought and then you're doing it something lishma, that thing never goes down. Moshe Rabbeinu built the Mishkan. The Mishkan was never destroyed. It was nignaz. Anything touched the Moshe Rabbeinu's hand never was destroyed. The Midrash says David HaMelech was meyased kotel ha'ma'aravi. It was never destroyed because David HaMelech had to do with it. Even though that what you see, David didn't build. He started it somehow. He saw it. He put maybe. Not going to be destroyed. David touched it. It's a big person, right? The kavanah really does matter. So Resh Lakish, years and years later, every time he would mention Rabbi Chiyahu Banav, said Hareni kaparat mishkavo, because if we didn't have this Rabbi Chiyahu Banav, what would we have? And that's something so important. We'll see the process of this is a fascinating story of the Torah twice being nishtakach mi Israel, and who reestablish the Torah the first time, the second time. We'll do that B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow morning. Chazaku Baruch.